So what were you saying about security?
Yeah, I mean, I like the space. I like some of the plays. I enjoy, trading like I do with stocks. And I guess my biggest hang up from just kind of going big is I don't want to have a lot of money just on these hanging on these words, these 24 words. You can write them on paper. You can get the Nano X, and they're on there. And I guess it's just a lot of money to be just kind of out there. That if I lose it, if my house burns down, I just still don't know enough about how to keep it completely safe. Like worst case, you lose that stuff, you're done, and I'm going to be pissed. And so I just don't know enough about like, what's my plan once I get all these assets? Like, what's my plan to make sure I don't lose them? I haven't got that far yet in my planning, which is probably dumb. I should have probably planned that first and then started buying stuff, but I just started buying shit, and here I am.
Well, I disagree. I think you did well because obviously it's gone up. And as we know, people that are researchophiles and not action takers, they miss out and they lose out. And so once you had enough conviction to buy, and there's a lot of people that were earlier than you and they've made a lot of money and they haven't gotten ripped off or had their money get lost in a blockchain. So there's a certain amount of leap of faith that you have to take. And it's especially easier. Like, I got into it earlier and it's like, okay, well, you kind of respected me. So it's like, okay, if he did it and I know he's not just, being willy-nilly with his money, then maybe I need to do it. And that's kind of what I do when I'm whether it's taking recommendations for a token or whether it's, just getting into the space. There's a certain amount of leap of faith that any of us have to do. And it's a little bit easier when those who have gone before us that we trust, respect, love, have done it, that we can go ahead and do that. But going back to your concern about security, I mean, you're a smart guy. Let's look at the different things you can do, because I've thought about this too. I mean, yeah, the 24 word thing is kind of sketchy. So like what are some things you could do? You could get multiple hardware wallets, right? And I know a lot of people do to defray risk. There are these things, and I'm going to find my friend got them. I haven't got them yet. I'm going to put them in the link below. Apparently, when you buy it, it's a package of 3 metal tablets, 1, 2, 3, and you engrave your 24 words onto these 3 metal tablets. And I hope I'm explaining it right. And apparently, you need 2 out of the 3. So as long as you have 2 out of the 3, you have your 24 words. But if anybody finds 1, you don't. And so, going back to the house burning down, you could hide or bury or whatever you wanted with these things around you have a pretty big property around your property, to where all of a sudden that's not a risk anymore. Agreed?
Right.
And yeah, could the blockchain get hacked? I mean, some people like the ultimate call it risk is, some people say, when quantum computing takes place and blockchains are able to get hacked, it's over. But let's face it, that's not going to happen overnight. Like if we're even getting close to that, there's going to be a new thing, and it's probably going to be in crypto or whatever. You're going to hear about it through the crypto people, and you'll have a chance to kind of diversify away from that risk. But it's been proven through Bitcoin, really, that even before I got in and I knew of it, but that, when you have your hardware wallet, you don't have your money. Everybody's money is always, their value, whatever you want to call it, is always on the blockchain. And that's the beauty of it, is it's all there, all locked up, all decentralized, because all these nodes have to agree. And it's probably safer than, we feel safe when money's at Charles Schwab or Chase or Wells Fargo or whatever, because we feel like this kind of institution, kind of like Big Brother will protect me. This institution, will take care of me. And if they get robbed, they'll make me whole, right? Like, that's why we feel safe.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If I die, if I just have this, IB account and I just go to sleep on it for 5 years and I die, and my wife's going to get that money like no problem. Like
for sure.
Right.
Well,
so yeah.
And I've thought about this. You know, because my wife, you know, doesn't really want the 24 words, and you know, I don't want her whatever leaving it next to a shopping list in her purse or whatever, you know. But I've thought about even how to do that. And so you could, you know, what you also could do is say, give her 20 words. You know, you give her the treasure map to the whatever, the 3 middle pieces. That's one thing. But you could also give her 20 words, and you could say, give 4 words to your estate planning attorney. Like, that's just, I don't know if that's the most mathematical way, but I'm just saying, like, kind of, you know, think outside the box with this. There's lots of ways to protect yourself, but I think what it comes down to, again, it's just a human nature thing, buddy, that we know of through centralized finance. And when things are new and foreign, people are scared, and maybe they'll try it for a little bit. And if it works out, they'll do a little bit more a little bit later, which sounds great in a vacuum, except for, like, there's a moment here, maybe, and you're right, it could go down, but I think there's a moment here where people could potentially get rewarded for going a little past their normal comfort zone, right? Going back to what we said, you know, like, even like with Bitcoin, like, I knew of Bitcoin when it was in the hundreds and the thousands, but it was a white paper and experimental, and I wasn't comfortable. And I didn't know if it would have mass adoption. So I didn't take a chance then, but those who did got rewarded massively. Why? Because they were early stage. And so there's these different stair steps of, call it, adoption. And in any cycle, there's always early adopters, late adopters, naysayers, everything else. And so you get rewarded the earlier you bite off that extra risk premium, or whatever you call it, right? So, like, I had an ex-client who, or he is a client on the insurance side, who is from Ukraine. And I said, hey, El Salvador got into this thing. Looks like Ukraine wants to get in too. I've really been studying this. If you want to just talk about it and understand it better. And he goes, no, I'm not comfortable. I don't know if it's going to be adopted here. I don't know if it's going to be adopted. And I just don't want to mess with it until I know how that regulation risk is going to shake out. Well, then later on, the US government comes out and says, we're going to go ahead and tax it, which essentially legalizes it. Once they decide they want to use it as a tax piggy bank, they've said, okay, we're going to regulate it. We're going to tax it, but it's here to stay. And that started kind of the bull run from 30 to 60. It had already been, Bitcoin went to 60, then back to 30, and then back to 30 to 40 to 50 to 60, and now we're back in the high 50s, whatever that is. But he wasn't willing to take that chance at 30. He's still not willing to take it in the 50s and 60s. He really wants to make sure there's mass adoption. Well, guess what? By the time that takes place, the price will be 250 or 500 for just a Bitcoin per se. So the earlier you decide to take a chance, and I think the risk reward ratio is there, especially since let's face it, you're highly allocated to the system that you're comfortable with, but there's a lot of risk there, right? It's denominated in a dollar that's debased by 30 trillion in debt, right? All these companies have record high valuations. You're just comfortable because you know they're like your kids. These stocks, you trade them, you know them, like you're comfortable with them. And this is something you're not comfortable with yet, right?
Yeah.
Pretty much. And so all I'm saying,
like I told you the other day, it's like if me and you are having coffee and I'm like, hey, you should buy, PayPal stock. Mm-hmm. You kind of know intuitively, like right away, if you think it's a good idea or not. Of course, you might want to look at the charts or whatever you might want to do. Mm-hmm. But if I say, hey, you should buy this XYZ crypto, you're like, I never even heard of that. So it's like, for sure, you have to go from like never opinion of this crypto to like putting money into it, and you don't even know what they do. So
there's no question.
Challenge of all these cryptos. That's like just buying Bitcoin is less of a challenge, right? But buying all these other ones,
there's no question. So all I'm saying to you, and I'm not asking you to just take this blind leap of faith and go outside your comfort zone. But what I am suggesting that you should do, because it is human nature, just like it's foreign, I don't know it, I'm just going to wait, or I'll just dabble a little bit. And if that works, we'll have this test and then I'll get a little bit more. And that works great with something like stocks that may move like this, or even insurance that just moves like this. People do that all the time. Like, I don't know if I'm comfortable buying this insurance and using it as my own bank and borrowing against it, but I'll start with a little bit. And if it works out a few years later, I'll get some more. Well, there's a natural inefficiency with that, because after you're a couple years down the road, you're older, oftentimes less healthy. But the kind of, call it the penalty isn't as steep as with something like crypto that moves like this. So what I'm suggesting you do, since we know it's just a human nature kind of primate block, is you have to get comfortable with it. And so what I've done is I've kind of put other things in my life on hold since May, because when I realized when Bitcoin shot from 10 to 60, I realized at that moment, like, okay, wait a second. I used to just think this was for off the gridders and tax evaders and doomsday preppers and computer geeks who just loved it because it was technological. And then I realized, whoa, when things go parabolic like that, that is the beginning of institutional investors and whales. And this is the beginning of mass adoption. And I'm not comfortable yet, but that was my cue to say, I need to just kind of put everything on hold and research hard and heavy to get into it. And that's what I'm suggesting you do. The problem is I have suggested that, and you're going to traditional sources for research for something that's not traditional. So you're looking for a website, you're looking for, there's a stock advisory that happens to be advising on that. And so these are the sources you're comfortable with, which there may be some good information. But what I'm suggesting is if you go to traditional sources for something that's not traditional, you're going to be late. And the information that you're going to be getting is the stuff, it's kind of like that late stage. You're getting stuff that maybe is really late stage. And so for something that is so bleeding edge, I had to realize, like, I'm not getting information, and I'm seeing price action and price movement, and I'm seeing a news article a day and a half later, or maybe 12 hours later, but by then it's too late. I want to know what's happening. And I realized that the best source of information is on Twitter. And it's not the way I'm used to consuming it. It's not the way you're used to consuming it. We want to see detailed analysis and reports and from institute, and it's not coming from that. Who it's coming from are the early adopters. And the early adopters don't communicate like that. And it was very challenging for me to realize, if I want really the most thorough and the most real-time information, it's on Twitter. And so it's coming in a very kind of ADD format. And so somebody's posting a tweet and I'm mining through these comments, or somebody posts a thread, which is really just like a sequence. It's a single tweet, but it's like 7 tweets deep. And then again, looking at the comments and then seeing who they follow. And so it really is a rabbit hole. It's a rabbit hole, but there's really good information there. And once you realize that it's not going to come at you in the traditional form you're used to, and it makes total sense why it isn't, and you go down the rabbit hole, now you have an opportunity to be early on some of these things, because you're right. Like you had said earlier, I think off video, that a lot of this stuff is going to go poof. And it is. Like a lot of it is. It kind of reminds me of the lead up to the tech bubble, right? Where all these .com stocks were just going crazy. And now looking back, 98, 99% of them were pure fairy dust and just went poof and they're gone. But if you can get to a place where you find even just some of the winners, right? And again, going back to diversification, it's not a wealth building tool like Focus is. Like everybody would have been great during the .com to go buy the online bookstore. Who'd have thunk it, right? And just buy and hold. How many people did that? I don't know. I know a lot of people made profits on Amazon all along the way. But since the potential alpha is so massive and so parabolic, you have room, like we say all the time, you have room to be wrong and still win. If you're diversifying your capital that you're putting into this into solid ones with solid fundamentals now, and they may not have as much appreciation potential, like call it the top 12, top 15 coins. There's definitely still appreciation because this is a massive planet and there's a lot of money flowing around out there. And a lot of it is debased by debt. Like if we look at all the currencies out there, the traditional currencies, right? The US dollar looks great in comparison to everything else because everything is debased by debt and looks like crap. But there's a lot of potential money to flow into these projects. And cryptocurrency is a little bit of a misnomer. Yes, peer-to-peer transaction is one functionality, but there's so much more in the way of smart contracts and being able to have these projects, these coins, and the function behind them. Well, in order to participate in that function, you have to have the native coin for that particular project or whatever that is. And so I guess what I'm saying is, as you're kind of spreading, you're making your crypto allocation, if you put it towards, for the most part, projects with solid fundamentals and actual business transacting on them, you'll probably do well. At least some of them will survive and hopefully thrive. And then if you look at the small caps, the stuff like going back to like Bitcoin circa 2013 or whatever, where it's like so experimental and it's just a white paper, but a really good white paper at that, sprinkling some other allocations to some of those, you don't have to be right on all of them. You just need some of them to go and you're going to be okay. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yep. Total sense.
So I guess the message is, you're not going to do anything until you feel comfortable and research it. But hurry up and change the way that you're used to researching it if you want good information, so you don't miss the bullet train. And yes, you said earlier, well, but maybe there's a big crash coming. Sure. But the nice thing about your situation, you're not like a guy who got into Bitcoin in 2013 and he's just like kind of all in and he's kind of just siphoning, just living off of, selling sats, selling Satoshis, little bits of Bitcoin to just support his lifestyle. You're still working. So you have the luxury of being able to dollar cost average into dips. And for me, that's given me comfort to say, I'm going to go a little bit bigger on this right now because I think there's a moment, and I may be wrong, like there may be a crash. But if I'm wrong, did I totally screw over my retirement? No, I didn't go that big. But I have a saying, I have a retirement plan, but crypto is my early retirement plan. And if I'm wrong and everything just goes to hell, well, I may have delayed my retirement by a few years, right? Even if you delay it by 5 years or a decade, some people are willing to take that calculated risk to be able to retire early. But since you have cash flow coming in, if you're wrong, we know about catching falling knives and not being able to catch the dead bottom. You're not a soothsayer. Otherwise, you wouldn't still be working. You'd be sitting on a beach somewhere. But you have the luxury to be able to dollar cost average into dips if you're wrong. And so, again, my message is, don't take the usual primate course and say, okay, I'm just going to slowly research this and take my sweet time. Stop what you're doing to a degree. Use the holidays to just pour in and get comfortable so you can potentially get in early if this is the dip, and maybe participate in some of that early stage alpha. And if you're wrong, have enough conviction that it's going to last. And look at it, reminds me of a tweet when Bitcoin was falling, fell from 60 to 30, and then it kind of popped up to the high 30s. And then Elon Musk tweeted that he was breaking up with Bitcoin, and it just like, boom, it just like fell like 20% or whatever. It just like, bam, slam. And people were tweeting like, you're messing with my livelihood, dude. What are you doing? And they were so mad at him. And this one guy tweeted, he said, hey, don't get mad at Uncle Elon, everybody. He's just holding up the train so others can get on.
Right.
So if there's a dip, just look at it like that. It's just another opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anything else to add?
With that, I am motivated to get a KuCoin account and get some of these small cap alts.
Let's do it. All right.